If you ask the most successful restaurant owners, what's the most important costs to watch in the restaurant? They will all tell you the same: food cost, because it can be the difference between super profitable and bankrupt. Which is why in this video, we're going to cover how to calculate food cost and the 3 secrets to maximizing profit using food cost. We'll start with the hidden benefits of knowing food costs, and then get into how to calculate it and talk about the different food cost strategies that you can use to increase profit and save over time. So you might be wondering, why are food costs so important? Because as you may have heard, restaurant industry profit margins are small. When you add the 3 major types of costs up, food costs, labor costs, and rent/overhead costs, that usually ends up making up 90% of revenue, leaving just 10% profit margins in the best case. But when you use the strategies we're going to cover to keep food costs low, you can double or even triple your profits, like the examples I'm going to share with you in this video. That's the benefit of calculating your food costs. Once you know the food costs of each item, you can strategize your menu to give you 200% or 300% more profit with the exact same amount of sales. It also lets you run proper promotions like buy one, get one deals and loyalty programs without accidentally losing thousands of dollars by giving away items for free where it doesn't make sense. So let's get into how to calculate food cost before we discuss the strategies for doubling profits using food costs. Here's the easy formula. Take how much you spend on food in a period, and then you divide it by the sales from the food you sold in that same period. So here's the formula. Purchases divided by sales equals food costs. Then you multiply that food cost by 100 to get a percentage. As an example, let's say you purchased $2,500 in food this week and sold $10,000 worth of food. You would take the $2,500, divided by 10,000, which gives you 0.25, and then you multiply that by 100 to get 25% food cost percentage. You might be wondering, is there a more accurate way to calculate food costs? Should I keep an inventory system running? And in working with thousands of restaurant owners over the years, I can say that the answer is no, unless you're doing more than $5 million in revenue per location, because that is the point at which it might be worth it to have such a precise inventory system. Until you have that big operating team and that type of scale, the juice is not worth the squeeze in calculating food costs, because it requires a huge amount of effort to keep exact inventory in a restaurant. And there's much more impactful ways that you can keep your food costs low without having to spend dozens of hours per month of your precious time on inventory. I can feel you thinking, okay, Adam, now that we've got the food cost calculated the simple way, how do I actually improve my food costs to increase the profitability of my restaurant? I'm going to skip all of the obvious answers like reduce wastage and negotiate good deals with your food distributor, and go right into the 3 secrets that are less obvious but that all of the top restaurant operators have in common to achieve profits that triple the usual restaurant. Starting with secret number 1, designing your guest experience around the moneymakers. The most profitable restaurants in the world have all designed their guest experience to push appetizers, beverages, and desserts, because that's where the real money is made in restaurants. Here's the math behind why. Entrees have a high food cost because they often include expensive ingredients like meats and cheeses. This is especially true lately with the supply chain issues going on and inflation. The prices of meats, cheese, and eggs have gotten absolutely absurd. That means that it's more important than ever to maximize profitability in this way. McDonald's is the perfect example that we all know well. On the surface, McDonald's seems like a burger restaurant, but if you look at their numbers, most of their profit actually comes from fries, soft drinks, and McCafe coffee, not from burgers. Their whole guest experience is secretly designed to get guests to buy those other items while they're buying the burger. They use their burgers to lure people in with great value. It's just $5 for a Big Mac. What a great deal. When you calculate the food costs on the Big Mac though, beef, American cheese, sesame seed bun, it ends up having a high food cost. Even in the quantities they're buying in, it's $2, which is 40% food costs on that dish, and means they just make $3 in gross profit for that Big Mac. Because they know that even though they won't have much profit on the Big Mac that when people order fries and a soft drink and maybe a dessert, those items have crazy profit margins because they have such a low food cost. When they add fries to that order, it might just seem like $2.50 in sales, but those fries are made of the cheapest possible ingredients: potatoes, vegetable oil, and salt. That means they carry a food cost of just 25 cents or 10%. That leaves $2.25 in gross profit for the fries they sell with that burger, which means that their profit just doubled just by adding the fries. We haven't included their dessert yet, their beverage, or any of these other add-on items. They tend to keep food costs on those appetizers, beverages, and desserts under 10%, which means that whenever a guest adds them to their order, they're doubling or tripling their profitability on that transaction. What's so genius about this model is that McDonald's has already spent the money to acquire that customer and to get them in the dining room. So when they're adding on those items, there's no additional labor cost or marketing cost or any other cost associated. It's pure profit. So you might be thinking, Adam, that's great for McDonald's, but my restaurant is higher end. I don't think I can use that type of strategy without cheapening my brand, which is why this next example is so important. Think back to the most successful fancy steak restaurant you've been to. What are their entrees? Usually their entrees are steak and fish. Even though they have a high menu price for those items, the food cost is through the roof too. Fresh fish has serious spoilage and high food costs associated, and the same thing is true of their steak, which means that the food cost on those items is going to average 40% to 60%, way too high to be very profitable when you combine that with the labor cost of preparing those dishes and all of the other overhead expenses involved in operating a steak restaurant. That's why their real money is made almost always on the wine menu. Their entire experience and business model is designed around it. Here's what I mean. It starts from when you actually sit down at the table before anybody has spoken to you. You'll notice that they have empty wine glasses for you to begin the association and upselling process with that are just waiting to be filled at your table. Then when you're handed the menu, they almost always give you two different menus. One is the food menu, and one is the alcohol menu. But they don't call it the alcohol menu. They call it the wine menu. Again, subtly pressuring people to order wine. Then when the server comes up to your table, they usually don't say, "What can I get you to drink?" They say red or white, which again creates a forced choice to order wine. When restaurants sell wine by the glass, they're typically selling it for 5 times how much it cost them to buy, which means a 20% implied food cost. That $15 average glass of wine cost them $3 to buy wholesale, leaving $12 in profit for them. And there's very little labor cost associated with pouring a glass of wine, so it's almost all pure profit for them, especially when you account for the average wine drinker enjoying 2 glasses over the course of their typical 2-hour meal. That's an extra $24 in profit. If we compare that to the math behind steak, the average steak at one of those places is $40. That's going to have a 50% food cost with steak prices lately, which means it's less profitable than the wine before we even account for the high labor cost of preparing the steak and the fact that people are only going to order one. So the steak is the low margin item designed to bring people in for the real moneymaker, the wine. Importantly, these restaurants create an experience where people have pressure to order appetizers and then desserts. For appetizers, after you've ordered that wine, they always ask you, what would you like to start before they come back for your entree order? This is so that everybody at the table orders one of the items from their appetizer menus, which again have been designed to have low food costs, high margin. And then after you've ordered your entree, which is typically that steak, they make it impossible to not order dessert. They give you the menu and they say, our chocolate cake is really famous. I highly recommend it. So that people are again adding on those items which have a low food cost. The entire experience is designed around them because they know that if they can sell one of those items, they have the same cost on that customer and the same cost to serve them. So it's almost pure profit. So how do you make sure your menu has these money makers built in? I'm about to share that in Secret 2. But before I do, if you've enjoyed this video so far and you want to continue learning about how to increase your sales and profits, then click subscribe below because I post multiple new videos per month on exactly that. Being subscribed means that you'll never miss those learnings. Anyway, back to Secret 2. Secret 2 is using premium pricing strategically with food costs. Because without using premium pricing strategically, it's almost impossible to achieve healthy food costs and profits. To do that, you start by figuring out the food cost for every dish on your menu. That means adding up the cost of the ingredients to make each item. Then, as a rough guidance, you should never exceed these food cost rules per category type. On appetizers, you try to average 10% in food costs and never have a food cost over 20%. On entrees, you try to average 25% and never have a food cost above 40%. Occasionally, you might need an entree that has a 40% to 50% food cost, like that fancy steak, but it should be the exception of your entrees, not the rule. Then on beverages, you try to average a 15% food cost. To achieve those rules as an independent restaurant, it almost always requires charging premium prices. Don't ever try to compete with McDonald's or Chipotle or Sweetgreen on their pricing, because there's no way to win that contest as an independent restaurant. They spend billions of dollars a year in food, which means they get the lowest possible price, and it would be a race to the bottom to try and match their prices. So what I recommend instead is being proudly premium, charging more for your high quality product and service. I recommend having a 3x pricing strategy on entrees and a few 10x pricing dishes that you can push hard as part of your experience. Those 10x dishes that have a price 10 times their food cost become crazy adds to your profitability and drop your food costs on average pretty massively. Charging premium prices can feel scary at first, but I think you'll be surprised at how people end up valuing your food more when there's a higher price associated. It makes them think of it as a higher quality experience versus what they get from the cheap chains. A great example of a 10x food cost item would be onion rings. Because if you think about the food cost behind onion rings, it's literally onions and oil. So while they're listed on the menu for an average of $8, they cost less than 40 cents to make, which means a 5% food cost. So when you're able to add those onion rings to an order for $8 and they cost you 40 cents to make, you've just pocketed $7.60 in pure profitability with no additional labor costs or overhead costs. And that is what ends up making your restaurant so profitable. There's been interesting research done on how premium pricing changes how guests think about products. And the research was actually done in the wine industry, where to create an experiment to see how people reacted to higher prices, researchers bought a $100 bottle of wine and a $2 bottle of wine. They switched the contents of each bottle of wine. Then they invited people in to do a taste test, where they didn't tell them anything, but they let them drink from the $2 bottle of wine and they let them drink from the $100 bottle of wine, not knowing that they'd been switched. What happened is when people tasted the $2 wine in the $100 bottle, they rated it higher across the board as the $100 wine in the $2 bottle. They couldn't actually tell the difference, and so they were using the association they had with the higher price as being higher quality. In the same way, if they're comparing your burger, which costs $14, to the $5 Big Mac, even if you're using the exact same ingredients, most people are going to rate your $14 burger higher in terms of quality because they know that it costs more money. Create premium pricing for a premium perception. Now that you've learned in Secret 2 the power of premium pricing, it's worth also talking about Secret 3, proper promotions, what you do when you need to increase sales using promotions. Before you know your food costs on each item, it's dangerous to do promotions like buy one, get one, or a loyalty program where you're giving away free food, because it can lead to costing yourself thousands of dollars on those promotions that are supposed to bring in extra profits. But once you know those food costs, you can be strategic about how you run promotions. And there's 3 big types of promotions that I see work great once you've got those food costs locked. Type 1 is buy one, get one free deals. Those deals work great for driving sales on slow days or for surging sales on highly popular low food cost items. It's key to only do it with items that have a food cost of 20% or less. So that means that even if you give one away, you're still at the high end of the healthy range of food costs, because then you're approaching 40%. Great items for that buy one, get one are entrees with low food costs, like noodles or bean cheese burritos or other items that aren't going to have that high meat cost associated. Anyway, the other type of proper promotions, which work great once you've calculated your food costs, is the guest loyalty system. That's type 2. There's a reason almost all of the most successful restaurant corporations in the world have a points-based loyalty system, which rewards people with points for spending more money with that restaurant. That That reason is that it works for increasing sales and customer frequency by rewarding people for spending money with you. But loyalty systems can become massive money losers if you're giving away too many items with a high food cost. So where food costs become a superpower here is making sure that the loyalty system only gives away the items with those low food costs to make guests feel like they're getting a lot of value without making the restaurant pay a lot of cost. Here's the magical math behind those systems. Let's use a low-cost appetizer like onion rings as an example here. When a guest gets a free order of onion rings through that loyalty system, it feels to that guest like great value because the onion rings are $8 on the menu and they just got them for ordering. That's awesome. But where it's magic for the restaurant is that those onion rings have a 5% food cost or cost the restaurant 40 cents to make. That guest feels so rewarded and special, like they've gotten $8 worth of value. So they're more loyal and they see your restaurant as a better value purchase. This can also save money in an unexpected way by giving guests a clear reason to order directly from your restaurant's website or app instead of DoorDash or Uber Eats. When guests feel like they get better value through all of the free items you give them, it becomes an easier decision to order from your website or your app each time. In fact, that's what the technology that I've designed over the past 6 years does. It's called Owner.com, and it lets you design your online experience to push those high margin, low food cost items and have your own points-based loyalty system so that you can reward guests for ordering frequently from you, all integrated with your POS. If you want to see more details on how that system increases restaurant sales, I'd recommend checking it out at Owner.com. By the way, as you're designing your guest experience around pushing these high profit items, if you would find it helpful to have me take a look at your menu and give you ideas based on what I've seen work best across thousands of restaurants, specifically for your cuisine type, pointing out the dishes that tend to sell best, that have a low food costs, and how to promote those dishes, then just comment your restaurant name and the city it's in down below. I'll take a look at your online menu and give you ideas based on what I've seen work best for your cuisine type.